Before the age of the twilight set upon the gods, a legend rose to claim his place among them. And even though Kratos sat on the throne as the new god of war, he was haunted by visions of his family. But the hands of death could not defeat him. The Sisters of Fate could not control him. And on this day, the man...
Throughout its history, the God of War franchise has always been one of the staples in the PlayStation library, starting with the original God of War all the way back in 2005. The series has undergone a number of changes through the years, including generational leaps with God of War 3 and Ascension, as well as PSP exclusive Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta. But regardless of the hardware, God of War has always been and is the perfect blend of storytelling and gameplay, masterfully mixing a pre-existing mythical setting with a unique story that has done a greater job at attracting people to ancient mythology and history than any schoolbook in the last 15 years. The 2018 reboot, simply titled God of War, was a welcome addition to the series, changing up the formula just enough to make the game feel fresh, but without losing its identity. We were still playing as the ultimate badass Kratos, we were still getting many complex characters including our hero, and overarching storylines that mix the real Norse mythology with the plot of the game. As a person who is somewhat interested in Scandinavian folklore and myths, I was really into the new setting and binged the reboot in less than a week in early December of 2022. Yes, that's only 4 years after its initial release did I get the opportunity to experience the game. And sometimes such things are for the best, as once I reached the ending of God of War 2018, I immediately popped the sequel into my PS5, making the cold month of December into a long God of War feast that ended exactly 15 minutes before the start of the new year. A truly mesmerizing experience, let me tell you. I just love playing games back to back and experiencing them as one big story, watching how things change and pick up from the point where they were left in the previous chapter. With God of War's Norse Saga, it felt like reading through the pages of an old chronicle, telling the story of a once fearsome godslayer trying to leave his eventual past behind, start a new life far, far away from the blood-stained lands of Greece, where he slaughtered almost the entire pantheon on the Mount Olympus. Of course, it being a God of War game, peaceful times do not last long, and once again Kratos has to embark on a long journey to fulfill the last wish of his deceased wife and spread her ashes on the highest peak in all the Norse realms, while bonding with his son Atreus. It wouldn't come as a surprise if I said that God of War 2018 is a masterpiece. It takes the best elements from the previous games and builds upon them, adding even more complexity to an already well-developed character of Kratos, allowing us to watch him evolve even further in his attempt to change for the better, while doing his best to protect his son and not to make the same mistakes that he made in the past. I love the road movie style of the reboot and how every scene was happening in real time without any major loading screens, adding to the immersion and allowing me to be in the moment, witnessing everything firsthand. Seeing how new characters are introduced and how they change throughout the game really got me invested in the story of these characters. The father-son relationship and how Kratos and Atreus got closer than before by the end of the game. Atreus and the harsh lesson of what it's like to be a god, and finding out more about his origins.
Whatever we want.
The brotherly love of Sindri and Brock and how they finally put their differences aside. The pain and struggles of Freya trying to save her son, only to see his demise as it was written in the myths.
Vulnerable now?
All of these stories were happening at the same time. They intertwined, got in the way of each other, only for everything to come together at the very end, leading us to the beginning of Fimbulwinter. A 3-year winter signaling the beginning of Ragnarok. God of War Ragnarok picks up at just about the tail end of Fimbulwinter, as Kratos and Atreus are training hard to be ready for anything that comes next.
three of us stayed. We made it.
If in the first game we only caught a glimpse of the Norse pantheon, with the biggest names being Freyja, Balder, Jormungandr and Mimir, in Ragnarok we get to see gods like Heimdall, Tyr, Thor and the All-Father Odin himself. This time the main focus is on finding answers, defining fate and carving your own path based on the decisions that you make and the consequences of those decisions. Many storylines from the first game are continued in Ragnarok and come as recurring themes in many dialogues and missions. How Freyja wanted revenge for her son, but slowly has to come to terms with his demise.
The point where I forgive you.
Atreus wanting more answers and trust from his father, while trying to save him from a terrible fate.
I can do.
The complex family relation between Brock and Sindri, and the scary truth that Sindri has been hiding for many years. Add to this many new overarching stories, brought to us by new characters, like Odin's dysfunctional family, the constant bickering amongst the gods in Asgard.
Yeah, you fucked up.
The lost giants and how they do their best to preserve what's left of their civilization.
She's lost.
And of course the inevitable war against Asgard that our heroes are desperately trying to avoid.
Well, happy Ragnarok, everybody! Let's drink.
Ragnarok sure does feel like a bigger game in almost every aspect, and the story is definitely one of them. I wouldn't say it's for the best, as some of the charm and detail of God of War 2018 was lost in the process, and the story does feel rushed at times. But this was inevitable, as the sequel covers far greater events in almost the same time that it took the first game to tell a much smaller story. The closest comparison that comes to mind are the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings cinematic trilogies, where one story is too small to spread across 3.5 hour movies, while the other is too big to cram into the same format.
I hope you know what you're doing. I do too, son.
A great story must be backed up by stellar gameplay, and God of War does not disappoint in this regard either. Sure, I will admit that I like the slasher-focused gameplay of the old games more than the one offered in the reboot, but they are both great in their own right and work well within the context of their respective games. Let's address the elephant in the room, the camera angle and pacing. The reboot feels a lot slower and more like your typical third-person action-adventure game from the last 5 years, but still manages to maintain the intensity and the feel of each attack that the God of War franchise is known for. Sure, it did give off some The Last of Us vibes with the level design and calm moments for the characters to explore and talk about what's on their mind. But if anything, these segments add to the whole experience, allowing the writers to really highlight the importance of the small details and why they are key in creating the overall atmosphere of the game.
Hostiles.
Thankfully, the combat in the new games is still fun, despite the change of pace and perspective. The new Leviathan axe is a welcome addition and really makes the gameplay stand out from the older installments. The Blades of Chaos also make their return, giving the old fans like myself some good primal fun, just like it was before. Probably the most hype moment of the 2018 reboot for me was when Kratos finally pulled out those bad boys from under the floor of his house, and the flames of chaos burnt once more.
Who will always be a monster.
As I've said before, Ragnarok is a bigger game than the 2018 reboot, and it shows in the gameplay department too. Basically, God of War Ragnarok is a very safe sequel. What it does, it takes the things that worked in the previous installment, multiplies them by 2, and there you go, there's your new game. Yes, this time you get to explore all the 9 realms, use more moves and tricks, get new toys to play with. Hell, you can even play as Atreus, as he is now older and can handle himself pretty well in the fight. However, apart from a few changes here and there, God of War Ragnarok does feel like the same thing, but at a grander scale. I do like the new spear and the revamped upgrade system, giving more variety in the builds that you can go for. But all in all, it's practically the same game from 4 years ago, with some additional bells and whistles. And, like I said, a very safe sequel, with the mindset, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I didn't really mind getting more of the same this time, as I wanted to know what happens next, even if it meant that I was playing a glorified DLC for 25 hours. Besides, Ragnarok is way more violent than the first game, returning the God of War franchise to its bloody roots, which is a definite thumbs up from me. The visuals and audio deserve all the praise in the world in the Norse God of War games. If you're looking for a reason to buy a PlayStation console, then look no further. I don't think that you would find better looking games than these two. The environments, the lighting, the colors, the reflections and particles all come together to create the biggest eye candy that I have seen in the entire 2022. Every realm has its distinct recognizable style, which is complemented by incredible music composed by Bear McCreary. Every track, every melody fills its purpose well and adds so much to the overall atmosphere of the games and enhances the moments where it really matters. And of course, the voice acting is spot on across the board.
That delectable aroma. Could it be? Pardon the intrusion. Ah, yes. Amber resin. Delightfully nutty with a hint of squidding.
No.
Not one for gastronomic exploration, I see.
I mean, the new God of War games are just a treat to look at and to listen to. The setting is also absolutely perfect to enjoy during those cold winter evenings with a hot beverage by your side, getting all cozy and in the moment. Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Where's the boat?
The God of War Norse Saga is an interesting case when playing the games one after the other in quick succession is the ultimate way to fully enjoy them. Sure, both the 2018 reboot and Ragnarok are perfectly capable games in their own right, but I can't help but feel that the first one would overshadow the sequel if there was more space between my playthroughs. It doesn't mean that Ragnarok is a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, as it does improve on the solid foundation of the first installment, but I do see it as more of a complement to God of War 2018, a second season if you wish, rather than a full-on sequel. The story that unfolded before me was breathtaking and felt like an awesome ride that slowed down at times when needed, only to pick up the pace again near the final, just like in any good TV series. And that's the approach that I would recommend to take when playing the Norse duology of God of War, as it is a truly spectacular two-season adventure that is best experienced back-to-back in the cold winter months.
I will get the deal.
Go on, girls.